What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Tim and April Show. I am Tim Whitaker.
And I'm April Ajoy.
I hope that your holiday season is going great. Hope that your Thanksgiving was fantastic, your Christmas is good, and that your New Year is excellent.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, thank you.
You're here.
Thank you very much. I'm here all night. Friends, today what we're going to do is we're going to pick up where we left off last week. We released a part 1 of April and I responding to 4 Christian nationalist pastors. Now, to be clear, the last video we did was 2 hours long. I recommend if you have it was too long. I recommend if you have the bandwidth to try and get through it before you get to this part. The reason why we do this, maybe let me just give a quick caveat, because people might say, why are you spending so much time responding to things like this? Because that's what we have to do. We have to be able to unpack the web and the knots and the propaganda that these men that we're going to talk about and others push all the time. Because if you don't examine it, it actually can kind of sound convincing. But I do want to say this. So there's a law. April, have you ever heard of Brandolini's Law before?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. Here's what it is. Brandolini's Law states that the amount of energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude bigger than the need to produce it.
I feel that.
Exactly. So I know that we only got through like 35 minutes and it took 2 hours, but that's just kind of like the name of the game. It takes more energy to refute bullshit than it takes to actually make the bullshit itself. So that's why we go through this stuff super methodically, because you have to. I mean, the reality is, April, you and I could probably pause every sentence when it comes to these 4 men.
Oh my gosh, I know.
But we're trying to find the balance. But if you don't know, from left to right, top left to right, we have Josh Howerton, Russell Johnson, Ryan Visconti, and Josh Stapleton, I believe. They're all mega church pastors, and they are all Christian nationalists who think that they're not Christian nationalists, but they actually admit that they're Christian nationalists. It's a very weird thing.
They redefine it. They're like, well, if Christian nationalism means this, then yes, we are that.
It's so frustrating.
But then they change the terms, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to get right into it. We're going to pick up pretty much right where we left off. We're going to get now into them responding to objections that people have about Christian nationalism, and we'll see how they hold up. So anything else you want to add to this, April, before I hit the play button?
Buckle up.
Here we go.
Recaps. We're going to quick hitter these. What we've noticed is once you start talking about this stuff, there's like at least 6 things that people immediately like, here's the objections. So here's what's coming at you. I'm going to toss them out. We'll quick hit them. Whoever wants to take it first, hit it. Number 1. Wait. We shouldn't be advocating for a Christian nation because we're just supposed to be exiles in Babylon. So we shouldn't really lean in, love our nation, advocate for Christianity to permeate our nation. We're just supposed to be exiles in Babylon and, quote unquote, go out of her. Thoughts?
Let me explain this to the audience before we get to their responses. This term Babylon in the scriptures and throughout the church has been used as a metaphor to describe empire. The Israelites were taken into Babylon, the empire of the day. Empire or Babylon is brutal. It's built on, coercion and power and control. And there's a very consistent theme all throughout the scriptures, in particular the New Testament, that Christians are on the outside or are resisting empire. In fact, even the term gospel, the good news, is taken from the empire. Early Christians took the idea of Caesar being a god who brings good news and repurposed it that actually Christ, the person that the empire crucified, is the true Lord. So there's a huge theme, and a lot of even conservative evangelicals have talked about the need for Christians to be outside of Babylon, not to be a part of Babylon.
In the world, but not of the world.
Exactly. Which I will say, as a Christian, I really resonate with the idea of being resistant to empire, right? I think as Christians, we are called to be resistant to empire. That doesn't mean that we can't be part of the world. Obviously, we all live in it. We're using technology of empire. But the idea is, how do we subvert it? These men, though, have very different takes on this notion. I just wanted to give the backstory so you all have context to what they're actually referencing. Here we go.
Israelites were drugged to Babylon. They did not choose to live there, and they were taken there as a result of God's wrath and judgment on them. Babylon symbolizes in the Bible ancient idolatry. It symbolizes divine judgment, whereas America was founded on Judeo-Christian values.
Oh God. Okay, I need to point out something. This just shows how white Ryan is. April, can you think of any group of people that were kidnapped and drugged and taken from their land to America?
I can.
You can?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not white people.
These so-called Judeo-Christian principles that the nation was founded on. Like, Ryan, for a lot of people in the country, they have a legacy of seeing America as Babylon because their ancestors were taken from their lands and kidnapped and drug over to America and forced to work for free. They were literally enslaved, and they built this country. And Ryan is either ignorant or just doesn't give a crap, and he's so bold, he wants to brag that somehow the foundation of America was built on Judeo-Christian values. Of what? Kidnapping black people from Africa and enslaving them, murdering them, sexually assaulting them? You got to be kidding me.
Also, the whole phrase, like the term Judeo-Christian values, is not really a thing.
It's
anyway, because the Jewish tradition has different values in a lot of cases than Christian the evangelical tradition.
And by the
Anyway.
way, that term was invented in the 20th century. It's not even an original term that the founders used. People don't realize, and you know this, April, that things like the Pledge of Allegiance, adding God to it, or in God we trust on our money, these were not from the foundation or the building of our nation from day one. These were added in the 1950s, some of them.
Right.
Oh,
and
gosh.
I think it would be fair to say that Christianity or people's faith had influence on some of the founders, but to say the whole thing, like the whole purpose of our nation was freedom from religion, from state enforced religion.
Sure, exactly. People's ideals shape things all the time. It doesn't make it inherently religious, right?
And the freedom to worship however you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not just, and also like this, evangelicalism as we know it today wasn't even around back then.
Not even close. It's ridiculous.
Prager, he's a Jew. He wrote a commentary on Exodus, and he said that no nation since ancient Israel was more clearly founded on the pillars of liberty and morality ever since. And that's America. So if you were going to compare America to Babylon today,
it is.
It's completely ludicrous, but that's the exact point. What we're proposing and what we're trying to advocate for is to keep America from becoming Babylon. That's what
It is Babylon, Ryan. We are the largest arms exporter in the world. We have a military-industrial complex that makes billions and billions of dollars off of bombing other nations. We bully other nations. We've toppled other nations' governments for our own interests. We are the only country in the world to have dropped the nuclear bomb twice on civilian populations. Like, I don't know how Ryan thinks that America, the world's richest country with only 3% of the world's population, that was built on colonization and brutality of other people, is somehow not Babylon. My flabbers are aghast in April on this statement.
I love you. We gotta let this go longer.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hold on. Can I just say one thing?
Oh, okay. Now you want to talk. I'm just kidding.
Just kidding.
I'm sorry.
But I
You're
just want to
right.
say, I find it personally annoying, and I've always felt like this, even when I was evangelical. When you have these bro-evangelicals, these theo bros, that sit around and debate, in my mind, what is frivolous and silly ideas. Like,
Totally.
Is America Babylon or not? I don't care. Is America providing human rights for all people? Is America providing food? Like, are we feeding our vulnerable? Like, why are we not talking about that? Like, honestly, that's, who cares? I don't care if America is Babylon or not. America did not exist when the Bible was written. And therefore, America is not Babylon by default, because America is America. That's it. That's just, I hate when people get in the weeds of like, oh, well, my theology is this and we're Babylon and we should be exiled. Like, I don't care.
April,
Anyway.
I'm sensing extra attitude from you today, and I'm here for it.
I am just annoyed that I had to deal with Theo Bros as a woman in evangelical spaces all my life, and that I'm still here dealing with Theo Bros.
As a former
That's it.
Theo bro, I am sorry. I will try and let this go longer. Here we go.
Really what?
Oh, that's great, bro. That's great. Okay,
And
Russ?
let's say for a minute, for the sake of argument, that they are correct, that America is this prototypical modern day version of Babylon, which of course is nonsense. But let's just say that they're correct. They would still fail the test of biblical literacy, because even when you look at the Jewish remnant who got taken to Babylon by force, one of the first things that the Jewish remnant did was immediately involve themselves in the governmental role, the governmental sector, to try to steer the nation in the direction of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You look at Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You look at all of the prophets from that Babylonian era. So let's say they're correct, which they're not. It's a brain dead take. But let's say they're correct. It would still fail basic biblical literacy, because all you have to do is read the books of the Old Testament that talk about the Jewish people who are in Babylon, and they are expressly involved in their government and in the legal affairs of their nation to do what they can to steer it in the direction of godliness. And so when they talk about exiles in Babylon, it's like they read half of one paragraph from a blog from Brian Zond, and then all of a sudden developed brain dead Anabaptist public theology.
It really is telling to watch Russell call Anabaptist theology, which predates his own theological tradition, brain dead, when it's actually pretty robust when it comes to nonviolence. The only thing I'll say to this, because I don't want to take up too much time, is that if Russell wants to play this game of the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible somehow applies to Christians today for how they're supposed to take over nation states and rule from the top down, which again, like, never actually happens for the Jewish people, but whatever. Do you know the 3 biggest things or reasons why God judges the nations? Because they neglected their poor, they neglected the orphan, they neglected the widow. Those are like the 3 biggest themes that we see, and it just is
that was the sin of your sister Sodom. That's what it says in Ezekiel.
Right. Like, it's just so weird to me to watch, to your point, April, Theo Bros make it seem like they just have this such clear-cut take when they neglect so many of the reasons why God brings judgment on these nations thousands of years ago from the perspective, by the way, of the underside. The Jews were a minority, not a majority, okay? And they were trying to protect their, I guess, rights, you can call them, for lack of a better term, to preserve their own literal lives, not because they were trying to rule over others, at least all the time. And when they did, it was always a problem. It was always a freaking problem. Anyway, it's just annoying.
It's just like the way that they're laughing too. It's just so condescending. Like, I find everything annoying.
Because they're Christian supremacists, right? They think that people like Brian Zahn is a very popular theologian who advocates for a nonviolent tradition. He's actually great. His stuff is awesome. There's no sense for Christian nationalists like these guys to listen and learn from different Christian traditions. It's all about which one is the best and how do I conquer the other ones. Mm-hmm. And so in this case for Russell, he has to denigrate the Anabaptist tradition, which again predates his own and is robust. I mean, actually all of his traditions are robust, you know, but the pompousness, the arrogance, it's just very telling of how these men view the world. Because they're Theo Bros.
I do believe that Am I freezing?
A little bit. You're delayed.
I am delayed.
It's okay.
Is it off? Is my audio off with my video?
No, you're in sync.
Okay, I'm just delayed.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
Okay. I don't remember what I was going to say. It's like very delayed on my end. I don't know what I was going to say.
Do you want me to pause and have you come back in, come back out?
Yeah, that'd probably be good. I'm going to make sure. Okay, I have something.
It's complete.
What's up?
I was going to say I was going to respond to you.
Oh, go ahead.
Real quick.
I'll mark this too.
Sorry.
This is a. I feel like you and I are in a mood today.
It's the holidays.
Exactly. I'm just like.
Okay. I, American evangelicalism, just stop laughing.
I'm sorry. I'm trying. Go ahead. You got this. I believe in you. Yeah. Drink that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was just gonna say, American evangelicalism breeds narcissists.
Yeah.
And I think attracts narcissists too, because you're taught like, oh, if you come to us, we have the only source of truth that you can just, hold over everybody's heads for all of eternity.
Exactly. I mean,
And that's just like part of this condescension, and it's with having such a shallow theological take too.
Oh my God, so shallow.
Like, and my biggest problem is like, I don't care. You can have that interpretation. Like, everyone believes what they believe, and there's nothing wrong with believing what they believe. But to act like they have the sole source of truth and that no other interpretations of Scripture are valid when they are valid is infuriating.
For sure. 100%. This, we often use the metaphor of like a basement to describe fundamentalism. And these are the gatekeepers. These are some of the biggest gatekeepers of evangelical fundamentalism right here. And I'm sorry, it doesn't hold water to me. It just doesn't. And the arrogance is like on display, right? Again, there's no humility. There's no sense of trying to learn. It's all about protecting and attacking, which is just foundational to Christian nationalism. All right, here we go.
Bull crap. It doesn't even make sense, and it's laughable on its face.
Rose got a day. That's Hawaii rage.
Sorry,
Josh.
Dude, you get Russ a little rest, boy. Look out.
Come on, man. Josh.
I mean, yeah, I agree with everything, and I have all these thoughts as they go, and then they say what I was going to say, and so nothing really to add other than everything he just said is true. There aren't a lot of examples of Christians getting involved in politics in the Old Testament, except for, generally speaking, all of Genesis, all of Exodus, all of Leviticus, all of Deuteronomy, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Ezekiel, Daniel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, all of the minor prophets. My gosh.
I don't want to be arrogant or a theobro myself, but he does know that there were no Christians in the Hebrew Bible, right? Like
they were Jewish,
or they were Canaanites. Like there's Christian. I mean, heck, Jesus wasn't a Christian. Jesus was a Middle Eastern Jewish man living under the occupation of empire. By the way, and to be clear, I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm not a follower of whatever he might say is the Hebrew Bible or the Christians there, quote unquote. And Jesus is pretty clear that his kingdom is not of this world, and his kingdom is where the last are first and the first are last. It's literally an upside down inversion of empire, of Babylon. Jesus was crucified by the Roman Empire. And I say this because I just read a book on this, actually. Crucifixion was designed to humiliate and denigrate. It was only reserved for the worst of the worst. It wasn't even allowed for Roman citizens. You had to be an outsider or an insurrectionist or someone who wasn't part of the Roman system in that way. And most likely, you were crucified while naked. And this is the form that God takes in human flesh. Not a God of empire, not a God of Caesar, not a God of someone on the top controlling the empire, but on the underside of empire, and on the lowest possible rung of the human hierarchy of his day. Born to an unwed mother who was a teenager, right? Born in a manger, born into poverty. Like, how do these men read the 4 gospel accounts and go, man, we got to control empire because that's what Christ would do?
Like, Jesus went willingly when he was arrested, didn't tell his disciples to storm Rome's capital. I don't know
It's
how you
unreal.
get to become a Christian nationalist if you read the Gospels.
Well, you have to follow a very white, colonized Jesus, right? Who believes in dominating and controlling your enemies. There's a reason why so far these men have not cited the words of Jesus. Have you noticed that? We're talking about the Hebrew Bible, and somehow those are Christians in the Hebrew Bible. So, but nothing about Jesus yet. We have not gotten to the red letters. I wonder if we will. I guess we'll find out.
All of them.
Besides those,
were
there's no
advocating-
Christian political engagement.
Besides
in the Old
those,
Testament.
there's really no biblical data to work with in understanding a framework where someone submitted to God would actively engage pagan governments of their day, working to steer them towards submission to a holy God.
I'm sorry. I have to say one thing. I'm sorry. I thought Ryan said that we were founded as a Judeo-Christian nation. So are we a pagan nation or are we a Christian nation? Were we founded as a Christian nation? Did we lose our way? Like, how does the logic work? I thought a second ago.
The logic is it's a Christian nation when it benefits them. It's a pagan nation when it benefits them. That's the logic.
Got it. Thank you for helping me with that.
You're welcome.
And the last
You're
thing
a
I'll
great
say is
co-host.
this. I haven't said much, actually, so I don't know why I'm saying the last thing. I'm going to talk again more. But one of the things to add to this is getting involved in politics is one of the ways a Christian can most faithfully fulfill the two greatest commandments, to love the Lord their God and to love their neighbor as themselves, because you may not
Which
care about
neighbors?
governments, but governments care about you. And if the government of your nation is not submitted to the God that you serve, that government is going to oppress and choke and regulate and rob and steal and obliterate your neighbors, including your children. So if you want to do the most good for the most people, you need to ensure that your government is happily, gladly submitted to the moral law of God. Otherwise, it's going to devolve into tribalism that's utter chaos, or it's going to devolve into globalism and tyranny that's utter oppression where power is concentrated among the elites, and it's just not going to go well for
I remember
short-circuiting.
when Joe Biden won in 2020, I saw a Facebook post from Evangelical that said during the first year of Joe Biden's term, he was going to allow China to come in and take over, and Christians would no longer be allowed to worship.
Well, here we are. Fact check true. True.
They make stuff up.
They
just
up,
make
yeah.
stuff up. And they also believe that you cannot be a good moral person unless you follow their version of a God. And as a Christian myself, who also believes in the Bible, but not in the way they believe it, I've met so many really good people who are atheists, who are Muslim, who are any variety of witch. I've met witches who are very kind. Like the idea that you have to be an evangelical to have good morals, that your country has to be led by an evangelical Christian in order to have good morals is just so backwards.
Well, yes. And let's just look at the fruit of what they're saying. Because for them, Trump is someone who's following the principles of God. I mean, they're huge Trumpers. The rapist, the man who lies all the time, the man who is best friends with a pedophile and is covering it up.
He blew Bubba.
Yeah, that guy somehow is submitted to God and their sick and twisted worldview.
Oh.
But Joe Biden, the Catholic who went to mass every Sunday, is not, because he holds a pro-choice position. And by the way, Trump is...
Which
anyway,
so do
yeah.
Jewish people.
Right, yes,
Like in
exactly.
the Jewish tradition, it
Many
is
do,
required.
for sure.
If the pregnant woman's life's in danger, she's required to have an abortion to save her life.
It is even his comment about, like, loving it fulfills the two greatest commandments: love God, love your neighbor. Which neighbors? That's my question to Josh. Which neighbors? Who benefits from the policies that you want enacted? I'll give you a hint. It's not your queer neighbor, so it's not those neighbors. It's not your it's not your immigrant neighbor. We all know that. It's not your black neighbor, because DEI hires. So what neighbors? Oh, your white conservative ones benefit the most? Because definitely not your liberal neighbors. You actually hate liberals. You hate Democrats. You have no problem with Trump saying he hates his opponents. You cheer that on. You have no problem with Stephen Miller parroting Nazi bullshit propaganda about immigrants. So let's just be very clear about what neighbors you're talking about. You're talking about yourselves, your friends, and your kids. Those are your neighbors that you think Jesus commands you to love. And newsflash, Jesus gives the parable of the Good Samaritan right after he states that, because someone in the crowd asks him, well, who is my neighbor? Could you imagine Josh saying that? I certainly could. Well, Jesus, hold on. Not all my neighbors. Certainly there's exceptions here. And Jesus gives the story of the Good Samaritan, which absolutely destroys the narrative that you are supposed to privilege or love one type of neighbor over the other.
I don't know. It sounds like toxic empathy to me.
Yeah, and wokeism.
Anybody.
Okay, now, Josh, I'm going to come straight back to you in a second, because the objection to what you just said, so I'm going to say something, but then I'm going to come back to you, and here's the objection I'm going to come back to you with. The objection to what you just said is, yeah, Josh, but all the examples of political engagement in the Bible, they were all Old Testament. So in about 30 seconds, I'm coming straight back to you, Josh, with, yeah, but Jesus didn't get involved in politics, and actually he actively steered his disciples away from it. Now, I want to say something but I'm coming back to you with that.
I'm excited to hear that.
So on the Babylon thing, what I do want to say is you'll hear this a lot from, sort of, I don't know how to say it. There's
Brian
a certain
Zahn.
segment
Yes.
of Christians that are like, hey, let's stay out of the culture war. Let's stay out of political engagement.
They call this
because
third
we're exiles
way
in Babylon.
Christianity.
The weird thing is, here's what we don't want to do. Let's not use one analogy that Russ has already pointed out is faulty. Let's not focus on one analogy to the exclusion of every other biblical analogy for how Christians are supposed to relate to the world. So there's a lot more in the Bible about victory, being salt in the world, light of the world, seeking the welfare of the city, a little leaven spreading through the whole lump, the kingdom of God coming on earth as it is in heaven. In fact, I just want to point this out. When Jeremiah gives us the command in Jeremiah 29 to seek the welfare of the city, even the word politics comes from the Latin word polis, that means city. When he is telling them, so again, just think about this. When Christians say, hey, exiles in Babylon, we should stay out of politics. When in Jeremiah 29, he says to seek the welfare of the city, guess what city he's telling them to get actively involved in and seek the welfare of? Babylon. He's specifically referring to Babylon in Jeremiah 29. So let's not, it's like you said, it's just a moot point on exiles in Babylon. Now, objection number 2. Josh is going to go first, and then we'll open it up. Josh McPherson, yeah, but Jesus didn't get involved in politics, and actually he actively steered his followers away from political engagement. Jesus told his disciples to go and make disciples. He didn't tell them to register voters. Paul didn't lay out a plan for a better Roman Empire. He told people to go and plant churches. Josh McPherson, what say you?
Oh, it's so frustrating. He literally laid out a plan to change nations for the better by commissioning them to go and make disciples of all nations.
What?
Like, that's the whole point. What? If our Christianity isn't making our individual self better, our families stronger, our communities more glorious, and our nation healthier, it's not actually working. So I would fundamentally disagree with the premise of that, in that when Jesus said, you are the salt of the earth, he's fundamentally encouraging us to be involved in all of life with our Christianity. If you keep the salt in the shaker, it doesn't help. You got to get it out onto our sexuality and onto our families and onto our politics and onto our laws. You have to get the salt into the world. Conversely, as well, he said, he said, you're the light of the world. So we're to take our light everywhere we go. Light doesn't discriminate where it shines. When you turn a light on, it pierces all of the darkness. It shines everywhere. So when people say Christ didn't tell us to get involved politically, first of all, there's some ways to respond to this. We're not living in the same context that Christ spoke in. In other words, they didn't have the opportunity to vote. They weren't living in it.
So Jeremiah, whatever he cited, that directly applies to us today. But Christ didn't grow up in America, so the context is different. Okay, got it, Josh.
Constitutional republic. They were living in a globalistic, tyrannical culture where they had no obligations or responsibilities formalized as citizens where they could exercise that. So it's not same context. We have both opportunity, privilege, and I would say obligation to be involved in such a way as to shape our government that our government has given us through our constitutional republic that is a privilege.
Can I pause here? Because here's the weird part. Not weird. I actually agree with them on principle. Okay? I agree on principle that Jesus people have an obligation, a calling to seek the welfare of the city, to love their neighbors, to get involved in how communities form, right? To promote more equal and just ways. Like I agree fundamentally with that. In fact, I disagree with some of the people who are like, don't get involved with politics. I mean, you're essentially erasing the Black liberation tradition when you do that, right? You're erasing Martin Luther King Jr.'s approach for how he took his theological convictions of justice and inclusivity and liberation, and then advocated for that in the nation that he lived in. So I agree on a foundational level. Christians should be involved or be willing to get involved in the politics of their day to seek the welfare of the city however they can. The problem is that what they want, what these four men want, and what Christian Nationalist wants does not reflect the actual teachings of Jesus, nor does it actually seek the welfare of the entire city. It usually comes down to privileging them, their kind, their churches, their perspectives over the well-being of everyone else. Again, a very easy example of this, April, right, is that we know statistically, according to data, that trans healthcare, trans-affirming healthcare saves lives. There have been empirical studies done on that. We also know that things like conversion therapy, right, which is where gay people go to a therapist trying to tell them you can change your sexual orientation, leads to higher rates of trying to unalive yourself and depression, etc. We know that data exists. So it's easy for us to say, well, as a Christian, we don't want our queer neighbors to feel like they're at odds with their body or their sexual orientation. So we want to promote a society where they are welcome and accepted because they're made in the image of God. That's not what Josh and Russell and Ryan are going to advocate for. They're going to say, no. The Bible, aka how we interpret it, is clear that God calls that sin. Therefore, the society we live in should do everything it can to minimize the rights of those neighbors from getting the access to health care or access to marrying their partner that might actually promote their well-being. So it's actually an inverse ideology where it actually ends up harming many of their neighbors. It actually ends up doing a lot of damage to many of their neighbors because they're more committed to dogma than to empirical evidence or things that actually promote the well-being of their neighbors, based on data, not on dogma. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because Christian nationalism is the elevation of one ideology to the detriment of all other ideologies.
That's right.
Whereas you can use your faith to advocate for all people.
Totally.
And
Totally.
and I think we all do that. We all use our beliefs in how we vote. I vote certain ways because they align more with my beliefs. I don't think you're going to get it 100% because, especially in this two-party system.
No,
but
sure.
it's the same. Like, you can use the Bible to oppress, or you can use the Bible to liberate.
100%. Look, I just want to read briefly just some of the Beatitudes, right? If the logic is disciples of Christ are called to make their nation better, then obviously whatever Christ taught is what we should be doing to make our nations better, right? So what did Christ teach? This is Matthew 5 verses 1 through. I'm going to read verses 1 through 10. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Do any of those ideals sound like things that are reflected in this current administration that these four men say God is using to make America Christian again? No. It's a complete inversion of all those things. Right now, our government is sniping out boats in international territory, killing survivors, and we have people like Ali Stuckey cheering it on, saying this is what God would want. This is not merciful. This is not pure in heart. That's not justice.
Yeah.
It's tyranny. right? You're in a boat and another foreign government snipes you out of the water? That's not freedom. That's tyranny. My God.
Yeah.
I can't believe these men really think that somehow what they're saying makes coherent sense. Read the freaking red letters. Jesus Christ. Literally.
Yeah, literally.
Anyway, okay, we'll keep going.
Second. Oh, we're going to say something, Ryan? Oh. I lost your train of thought. What was I
Let me
saying?
jump in real quick, and then you pop back in. I was just going to point out, I literally
sorry,
heard,
I thought you
sorry,
wanted to say
I didn't
something.
mean to cut you off. When you're in the middle of this just
No,
brilliant.
that's okay.
He's giving me the
Brilliant.
little signal to come to him
that's what
next,
I meant.
Josh. That's what he's doing.
But I
My bad.
literally,
We'll jump
I
in,
literally
Ryan.
heard
Sorry.
someone
I'll get
this
my thought
week
back.
say, someone said, hey, Jesus said to disciple people, not nations. And it's like, no, he literally said to make disciples of all nations, not all skin colors, not all ethnic tribes, right? Nations. And what do you think happens, bro, when you disciple all the people in a nation? You get a Christian nation. Like, and that's going to affect everything from the top down. And then when Jesus in the Great Commission said, how do you make disciples of all nations? Teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. How do you teach them to obey everything that Jesus has commanded?
Yeah.
Not just in
Feed
the church
the hungry,
house, but
liberate
also
the
in the
oppressed,
courthouse
love
as
your
well, in the
enemy.
schoolhouse. That's where you teach a nation to obey all God's commands.
Great, Ryan. Great. So let's get universal healthcare passed. Let's reinforce SNAP benefits. Let's liberate the oppressed. Let's get rid of mass incarceration because we're like there are. I agree, Ryan. I agree. Let's do what Jesus Christ taught. Oh God, Jesus never mentions trans people. Doesn't mention gay people. Doesn't mention abortion. He doesn't mention the 10 Commandments going up in the Roman Empire. All those things are absent from the teachings of Jesus, Ryan. Like I don't want to call them stupid, but like you have to be like either foolish, ignorant, maybe stupid, I don't know, for you to really think, yeah, we do what Jesus taught us and then do things that are antichrist in nature.
Also, like,
I feel like I'm losing
I
my
love
mind.
how they're taking nations literally, therefore go and make disciples of all nations. But then right after that, it says baptizing them in the name of the
Right.
Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit. So are you supposed to literally like hurricane a whole nation? Like,
Oh my God. I have a cough and you're making me cough. How do you baptize a whole nation of America? You just dunk. Well, you know what? Maybe with global warming, sea levels rising. Just a bad joke. But yeah, it's.
but also, like, even if Jesus was saying to go in and make all nations Christian and to obey like my teachings, Jesus's teachings are not what they're teaching. So, like, right off the get-go, there's still that disconnect.
Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge. I mean, it's just do they do that? Is Trump doing that? Do we believe? Like, oh God, it's just so frustrating. All right, we'll keep going. Friends, if you're enjoying this at all, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for being here.
Enjoying is a strong word.
Yeah, well, I don't think we're going to do a part
Enjoy
3.
us.
I think 2 parts is good enough for this.
Yeah. When Jesus talked about Caesar and our relationship to him, there was a fundamental assumption in Jesus' teaching that Caesar also bows to Jesus. And who's going to teach Caesar that if the church goes silent? It's the church's obligation and responsibility and privilege to remind Caesar that the government is nothing more than a jurisdiction created by God for the good and flourishing of all people,
All
only
people.
if they are submitted to God's law.
Oh my God.
I have never, in all of my evangelical-ish life, have never heard that Jesus said, when he said, render to Caesar what is Caesar, he was saying that under the assumption that Caesar followed Jesus. That is...
Or that he would like submit to
bizarre.
Jesus or something? What?
Like, it was always taught to me that Caesar represents a secular government, and as citizens of this world, you render to the government that you're under whatever it is that they ask for, whether that's taxes, following the laws, whatever. That was always how it was taught to me, even in my very conservative evangelical circles. I cannot. I cannot. I've never heard that interpretation
chapter and
before.
verse, Josh. Chapter and verse, please.
They just make stuff up.
they have they cited one scripture verse from the words of Jesus yet? Have they?
Well, he just did, saying what he said. Well, he inferred what he said about Caesar, but then added a bunch of crap that is not there.
I'm short circuiting. Like my mind is short circuiting over this.
Oh my gosh. It's like not even worth debunking a lot of this stuff, because like what he just said, and I don't mean this like in an insulting way, but what he just said is actually really stupid.
Like you're just reinterpreting things.
Yeah.
But don't worry. Once they're the government, then we all have to submit to them. Right.
We don't talk enough about and I want to be careful when I say this, because there are really intelligent people that get sucked up into Christian nationalism.
Sure.
But the idea, and the same thing with any sort of cult or high control group or fundamentalist. Like there are very intelligent people that get wrapped up in that world. We were in that world also. But there is a just basic level of anti-intellectualism that exists within this ideology. Like you cannot be a fundamentalist in the way that like they're talking and be a Christian nationalist or be MAGA while trying to follow the teachings of Jesus without having a level of anti-intellectualism just in your body, because there's so much cognitive dissonance. Like the logic goes out the window when you step into a Christian nationalist room. Because it really is conflicting. And that does not mean that these men are stupid. I think they're probably very intelligent men, but they've been wrapped up in this. Well, and they also could be on a power trip, because I do think that that's a big piece of it. You can suspend your disbelief when you get power.
Yep. I know. You're totally right. 100%.
Job as the church to teach the clear jurisdictions of human thriving, which is the family, the church, and government, and to remind the government that they're submitted to God. And then
that by the way, that's nowhere. Like Paul never says that. In fact, Paul in 1 Corinthians 5, I'll quote some scripture for you. In 1 Corinthians 5, the apostle Paul is dealing with a church where a man is sleeping with his father's wife, so like his stepmom, and the church is celebrating it. And so Paul's like, hey, you shouldn't do that. It's sexually immoral. Hand that man over to Satan, because he's not repentant. And then Paul goes on to say, by this, I don't mean to judge everyone outside the church who is sexually immoral, or else you would have nowhere to go. Because it is your job as Christians to judge those inside the church, and it is God's job to judge those outside the church. Like he actually makes a clear distinction of the role of the Christian or of the person in church, and that it's God's job to judge, quote unquote, the world, and that it's our job to hold ourselves accountable inside, which is so ironic given all the freaking church abuse that goes on in these spaces and the men that get to be platformed at these people's churches. Like it's no big freaking deal. Like for example, Michael Brown, who went around grabbing women's butts. That's no big freaking deal. But, we have to judge the world and make sure that the government knows they have to submit to God, a.k.a. our interpretation of what we think God is like based on a 2,000-year-old collection of ancient texts of which we have none of the original autographs of. We're just doing our best to interpret them. And our interpretation compared to everyone else's out there in the Christian tradition, especially the stupid Anabaptists, we're right and they're wrong. So you have to submit to us, because that's submitting to God. It's all about power. These men think that they have a direct channel to the God of the universe and that their interpretation of the Bible is the only right one. And therefore, anyone who opposes them goes against God. How narcissistic do you have to be? How egotistical do you have to be? How prideful do you have to be to think that you, a little freaking ant out of billions of years of evolution, just happened to hit the theological jackpot? Somehow these guys just happened to, you hit the freaking cosmic lottery, guys, that you figured out what the God of the universe wants all of humanity to do. It just happens to look like everything that you want in society. Wow, unbelievable.
Well, it's kind of like, I feel like their argument falls flat if you think about it from like the eyes of a parent, right? It is okay for you to parent your children how you see fit. Like you can make your own rules, and you shouldn't abuse them, obviously, and I think a lot of them do. But regardless, with spanking, whatever. But you can parent, like I could tell my kids, you're not allowed to watch K-pop Demon Hunters because I think it's demonic or whatever. For the record,
Right.
we love K-pop Demon Hunters. But like I could say that to my kids, and I have the right to, parent my children in the way that I see fit. But I cannot go to my neighbor's kids and say, oh, actually, I'm going to unplug your TV or cancel your Netflix account because you can't watch that because I'm not letting my kids watch that.
Exactly.
Like that,
Exactly.
all those men would agree that's insane. But they have no problem doing that when it comes to their beliefs on a large national level.
That's right. These men think that the church is the highest form of power and authority because they represent God. Therefore, they have a mandate to make the government submit to them. That's what they think. And they think that they are representatives of that God and that they have been charged with a special anointing, a special calling to talk to the empire, so to speak, and then hopefully to become the empire and to control it. That's what it comes down to.
I would say this. I think the Pharisees and the Sadducees were a political entity.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They were the political entity of the day, and literally the
good.
entirety of the Gospels is Jesus combating, is Jesus confronting,
No, Rome was.
and is Jesus correcting the political structures of the day in the Jewish world, which were the Pharisees and the Sadducees that were functioning as a mini globalistic, tyrannical, elitist government that were actively oppressing people because they were making up rules unto themselves rather than submitting to the rulership of Christ. And so,
What are you talking about?
What?
They
What?
were religious. They were clearly religious, dictating their religious laws to the
Yes.
people in their religion.
Tell me you know nothing about Judaism. I mean, no, Rome was the empire. The Jewish people were allowed to have their own tribunals and councils for how to enforce or how to follow through on the Torah, the law of God, etc. But they weren't like the political leaders. They were still under the boot of empire.
Right, and you could argue they had political influence and
Sure,
how they talked
sure.
to Caesar and made trades and stuff, but to say that they were political entities.
The reworking to fit this into their narrative is like, honestly, it's almost impressive. It's almost impressive. The
But also,
globalistic,
how do they
tyrannical
not
leaders,
see-
what?
Like, okay, if you're talking about political influence, I almost think you could make a connection to white evangelicals today who have very big political influence, but they would argue they are not a political entity. They're a religious entity, but they really are a political entity in the way
Right.
that they maneuver and in the way that they've, infiltrated the Trump administration, which is what we would equate with Christian nationalism. So it's weird how they're also like in this world, like, and I've heard from a lot of Jewish people that it's insensitive to call a religious
Yes.
hypocrite a Pharisee because that, like, there were religious hypocrites that were Pharisees in the Bible, but the Pharisees were an entire religious group that had their own beliefs and systems. And so
Totally.
I don't like using the term Pharisee
Same,
to describe
same.
religious hypocrites. I always just say religious hypocrites because you don't have to be Jewish or a Pharisee to be a religious
You
hypocrite.
could be evangelical.
Right. But when you're an evangelical, like, calling someone a Pharisee is like a curse word. It's an insult. So it's weird seeing them kind of try to use that justification of like, well, these people were political to try to justify them being political when those people were the bad guys
Well,
in that narrative.
Isn't that what's telling? Like, look, if we're gonna use this terrible analogy, they're the religious elite in power, shaping laws that are oppressing people. Christianity, in particular evangelicalism, is overrepresented in our government. They are making laws in states. They're making laws at the federal level. They have $1 billion+ war chest of organizations like the Alliance Defending Freedom that are hell-bent on taking cases up to the Supreme Court to rule against the rights of other people, right? So they're actually the very thing that they're trying to critique. You guys are the globalists. You have a huge missions infrastructure that exports your theology all around the world. You're colonizing theology. You do that, guys. You are the ones in power. You got your guy elected. The rapist and the guy who's best friends with the pedophile and the guy who lies. That guy, he has there's an office of the Faith Council that Paula White is in. One of yours. So congratulations. You are actually the very thing that I guess you think is like tyrannical and globalistic. Like, you are those people. You're in charge. You did it. You got what you wanted, and you're creating hell on earth for everyone else. Like, I'm not sure how else to say it. These guys are mega church pastors. They probably make very good money. They probably have lucrative book deals. They are able to go to the White House and worship. We've seen videos of them doing that. They have connections directly to President Trump. They've sat in the chambers of the highest levels of our offices federally. Congrats. Congrats. You did it. You did it.
Good job.
Yeah, good job, guys.
Argue that literally Jesus's entire ministry was combating the wicked politics of his day as embodied by the progressive left calling themselves Sadducees and Pharisees.
I'm sorry. Stop. We gotta stop. What? What? You are shitting me.
How do you say the people that were like, oh, you can't do that because that goes against this fundamentalist law that we follow? How are those people the progressive left?
Progressives. If anything, progression is when Jesus says things like, you've heard it said, but instead I tell you this. That's progression. That is progressive in nature. Josh! You know what's not progressive? Genesis 1 makes it clear that trans people don't exist. That's not progressive. Okay? I'm just saying, what are you doing? Oh my God.
Let's keep this going.
Sorry,
I'm gonna get a little
100%
notebook.
right.
I'm gonna make notes.
Just
Yeah. Okay. Good call.
Sorry.
Good call.
Sorry.
last year we had evangelicals for Harris. In the first century, the Pharisees and the Sadducees were evangelicals for Herod. It was like a subordinated political class that worked in conjunction with the Roman government.
That's what they want to
did
do.
what they can to, try to better legislate the daily life of the Jewish people who found themselves now occupied by the, superpower of their day, which was the Roman Empire.
Isn't that what they want to do?
A religion that does not interfere with the social order will soon find a social order more than willing to interfere with them.
What is happening?
You just have to make the decision and the determination.
Wait, I have to replay that. Did he essentially just said the thing that they're trying to do, but made it seem like it was a progressive leftist thing? Hold on, I gotta back this up. I'm so curious.
To him, there was a fundamental assumption.
Sorry, it's hard to scroll.
Is Jesus confronting? And is
That's kind of funny.
Better legislate the daily life of the Jewish people who found themselves now occupied by the, superpower of their day, which was the Roman Empire. But, a religion that does not interfere with the social order will soon find a social order more than willing to interfere with them.
I don't understand.
So you just have to make...
I'm pretty sure he just told the quiet part out loud. He made it seem like these evangelicals for Herod were the ones interfering with the Roman government, trying to make it better for Jewish people. But that's exactly what you guys want to do. Like that's your whole premise, right? Is that you have to take over government, make it submit to your view of God's law for all human flourishing. So aren't you just telling on yourself here? Like, am I missing something, April?
It is so much projection. The things that they accuse progressives and leftist people of doing is what they actually do.
It's like shocking to me. Shocking. Wow.
Decision and the determination about whether or not there is real inherent value to the moral claims of your belief system. Because if you believe in those inherent values, then you have no opposition to advocating for those on a local or a national scale. Secondly, when Jesus tells his disciples, upon this rock I'll build my church. That word church, of course, in the Greek is ecclesia. That was an expressly political term borrowed from Athenian democracy. Jesus is utilizing these political words on purpose to describe the framework for the kingdom that he has come to establish. Thirdly, it is the express influence of Christians on the Roman Empire that eventually lead to the conversion of Constantine and the Christianization of the Roman Empire.
Yes, Russell, you're right. He's absolutely right. It is through Christians staying in bed with empire that Constantine becomes a Christian and then becomes the empire that they were initially subverting. This is one of the worst things that ever happened to Christianity was when it went from a outlier subversive movement to the empire conquering through violence and through power and control and dominion. We are on different sides of the Christian coin here. Okay, there's always been a Christianity that has been focused on domination and power and control and co-opting empires and becoming the empire and using whatever means necessary to do it. Violence, intimidation, whatever. And there's always been a stream of Christianity that has been under the boot of empire and has been dreaming for a time when all the empires, right, crumble and the low are made high and the high are made low. The first are last and the last are first, etc. This is two different types of Christianity, and we're seeing it manifested now in America, but it comes from a very long line of Christian. I mean, Matthew Taylor argues, he calls it Christian supremacy, and that's exactly what it is. So, wow. Yeah. Agreed, Russell. Agreed. Okay. You're still taking notes?
Yeah, just keep going.
Okay.
All you have to do is follow the first century New Testament framework for about 400 years, and you see the power of Christendom to take the world superpower of its day, turn it on its head, and see revolution, all across the empire in a way that advocates for the greater good and the virtue of the people who stand under the canopy of the empire of that day. And so, when people say things like, well, Jesus never advocated for, a political solution, it's like these red letter Christians who cherry pick things out of the synoptic gospels and then they ignore the broader context of the New Testament. If Christ is not powerful enough to be king over the political sphere, then the gospel is not nearly as powerful as we claim it to be. There is a responsibility for believers to find themselves involved in the public square of civic engagement. That has never once been controversial until recent history, where all of a sudden people want to renegotiate 2,000 years of Christendom and act as if we should be living in neutral, not involved, completely disengaged, because that's the most moral or Christian thing to do. It's just backwards thinking.
Can I say something really quick?
Yes, please. I talked a lot.
Okay. I agree to the extent that Christians have always been political in nature. The problem with what he's saying and what their argument is that they are wanting to be political with the intention of gaining power and oppressing people. And I don't even know that they realize that what they're, I think some of them know. But you come from such a basic misunderstanding of a lot of cultural realities, a lot of scientific realities, like what they want to do to trans people, which is, as Michael Knowles once said, eradicate transgenderism. Yep. They want to completely get rid of trans people. They don't see their opposition as human. And when you don't see your opposition as human, as part of the Imago Dei, as part of God's creation, made in the image of God, you will do absolute horrendous things to those people. Just like you mentioned, what we're doing to immigrants right now, how we're treating our trans neighbors right now, how we're taking away health care from women,
millions.
from just not even just women, from just all of Americans, and doing it in the name of God, doing whatever it is, you are using the Bible as a weapon. It's happened in 1930s Germany. The
100%.
idea that just because you can use a Bible verse to justify your position, granted out of context, means that you're somehow on the right side because you have a Bible verse to back that up. The Nazis had Bible verses.
95% of the church in Germany went along with Hitler.
Yeah.
95%. We really have whitewashed what happened in Germany, and we really underestimate the power of Christian theology in that time. Last thing I'll say to this is that Russell really smooths over the bloody and violent history of quote-unquote Christendom. Even the Protestant Reformation, bloody, wars, death, taking over of cities, killing women and children. It's a bloody history when you get into a supremacist mindset thinking that your view of God, your view of the scriptures, your view of the world is the only right way and everyone else must bow to your whim. Christendom is a horrible thing. You know why? Because Jesus preached a kingdom that's not of this world. At the same time, I think, of course, to agree with these guys, we have an obligation to seek the well-being of the city. The problem is that what they're advocating for is actually destroying the well-being of so many of our neighbors. And that's not even a question. Even other Christians, right? We know that most immigrants who have been kidnapped by this administration, first off, have no criminal history. Number two, are either Catholic or evangelical. Right. How about the Christians in Palestine? Where this administration, or really, I should backtrack, this American empire, because both Biden and Trump have been responsible here, have been dropping bombs on the heads of our quote-unquote Christian brothers and sisters in Palestine, right? Yeah. So this is what Russell fails to either mention or to understand. This stuff leads down a bloody, violent path.
It's just a disingenuous argument that because historically speaking, Christians were involved politically, and they'll look at the civil rights movement and think they would be on the side of the civil rights. There were Christians that used Bible verses to oppose the civil rights movement. So it's exactly. It's so disingenuous the way that and honestly, it's part of the Christian Nationalist playbook, right? Especially when you present and believe that your version of Christianity is the only true form of Christianity. So when you quote unquote stand up for your faith and you try to enact your laws that are based on what you believe is moral, then when you get pushback on that, like, hey, you're actually really harming immigrant people, instead of like, oh, I'm just standing up for my faith, you hate God.
Exactly.
The way that they can twist it into this persecution complex, we're seeing it in the last couple of weeks. Yep. There was that Oklahoma student who wrote an essay about how trans people were demonic and said because the Bible, it doesn't matter. It was a terrible essay, but she then framed it as, when she got a bad grade, as Christian persecution. Despite the fact that she provided no empirical evidence. This is a secular college.
Right.
That it's just so annoying. I am just constantly annoyed. And then I also feel a little guilty because I used to be just like that.
Totally.
And it's just so many emotions.
Let's go a few more minutes, then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
And I would add to that.
Let me finish it.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just one quick note for any Christianity 101. I would warn a person listening to this, whenever you hear people start trying to differentiate the words of Jesus from the rest of the Bible, you get into very dangerous territory.
No, you don't.
And that is a specific tactic that heretics use to try to justify sins. They'll take a sin that's explicitly abomination, like homosexuality. Right. It's laid out very clearly in the Old Testament, in the New Testament.
For those of you listening who are maybe hearing this argument where someone like him is going to say, be wary of people who want to differentiate the teachings of Jesus and the rest of the Bible. Let me tell you, be very wary of people who don't value the teachings of Jesus more than the rest of the Bible. Be very wary of people who will quote the rest of the Bible, but don't quote the teachings of Jesus, because what these men are doing is showing you that they don't actually follow the teachings of Jesus. They would choose the Bible without the Gospels if they could. They actually 100%. Despise who Jesus was and what Jesus represented, because the teachings of Jesus are a kryptonite to their ideology, and them trying to differentiate and or trying to demonize those who would say, but you're not following the teachings of Jesus. The reason that they even have to say this caveat is because they're not following the teachings of Jesus. And it pisses me off to no end, because we are Christians. Christ is in the word. You have to follow Christ to be an actual Christian. Otherwise, you're just a nationalist pretending to be a Christ follower. And they have to do all these little justifications. They have to say, oh, well, Jesus actually meant Caesar followed Jesus. Like, no, he didn't. Y'all just don't follow Jesus. Period. I just got very annoyed there.
No, bravo. fan-freaking-tastic. 100% right on the money. And notice how Ryan's going to pick up, quote-unquote, the abomination of homosexuality. I mean, it is so amazing watching them pick up. First off, let's just say he's right. He's not. I think the Bible mentions the word homosexual, I think like 4 or 5 times in the entire Bible, but has thousands of passages about how we treat the poor and the foreigner and the widow. And for Ryan, the abomination is homosexuality, not how we treat the foreigner and the widow and the poor in our nation. James 5 is a scathing critique of rich business owners who exploit their working class for unfair wages. They're never going to talk about those passages. They're never going to cite those passages because, honestly, they are bigots. They need a justification, right, to give in order to promote their view of homophobia. That's what it comes down to. They just don't like gay people. They think that gay people are gross and disgusting and that trans people are abominable and are weird. Right. And so they pillage the Bible like the freaking colonizers that they are, right, for little snippets of text, which, by the way, even underneath of that don't hold up, by the way, okay, for many, many reasons. And they use that to prove that the Bible's so-called clear on that. Then they spend hours creating these mental gymnastics that Jesus didn't really mean what he said. Oh, sure, I know he said liberate the oppressed, but that was about spiritual sin nature. No, it wasn't. No, it was not. It absolutely was not. Oh, Caesar followed Jesus. The Pharisees were like the political government, the globalist government of their time. No, they were not. You were just making shit up. Like you're pulling it out of your butt. You're just pulling it out of your butt.
Also, a couple of my favorite facts to bring up is that the word homosexuality was not actually interpreted into the Bible until 1946. There's a great doc on that if you want more info. And also, King James of the King James Bible was in a gay affair.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. It is.
Anyway.
It's. Anyway, okay. We'll keep going. It's just so annoying.
But they'll say things like, Jesus never said anything about homosexuality, and they'll use that to try to persuade people that it doesn't really matter to Jesus. But all of God's word comes from God, and Jesus is God. And so the Spirit of God inspired all of God's word, and Jesus supports all of God's word.
Anti-intellectualism.
You need to understand the proper place of Old Testament law compared to our guiding principles as New Testament Christians. But all of God's word is useful for us and helpful. We don't divide the words of Jesus from the rest of the Bible to make an argument that contradicts the rest of the Bible.
This is actually a great. Maybe we could stop here, April. I don't know if you want. It's over an hour, but like just to be clear, like this is just a made up idea that has no actual data. Now, to be clear, I don't think people shouldn't hold to that view. If you want to believe that all Scripture, quote unquote, is God breathed, and if you want to include that to the New Testament as well, which Paul had no idea about the New Testament because it wasn't made yet, that's your prerogative for sure. But let's be very clear. The Bible, as we have it today, is a collection of ancient texts from different authors, different editors, sometimes communities editing texts. We have not one single original manuscript in the entire Bible, meaning the people who wrote the first draft of Matthew, for example, we don't have that. It doesn't exist, okay? And people in different points in history wrote scripture that we now have compiled into the Bible. So, for example, the person writing or persons writing Genesis are living in a different time in historical context than the person writing Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. They're not. It's not like one day, a week ago, someone wrote Genesis and said, I'm writing Matthew. It was written over spans, hundreds, thousands of years. So to flatten the Bible out and to make it seem like God just spoke it into existence miraculously, and the Bible we have is the words of Jesus, all of it, is not being faithful to what the Bible actually is. They're red letters for a reason, Ryan, because we have the best evidence that we have that maybe Jesus said these words, but he did not say the things in the Hebrew Bible. He did not say, kill all the Canaanites, including women, children, and men. He didn't say that. Someone else said that.
He would have contradicted himself. And supposedly the Bible is inerrant. And it cannot be inerrant if you believe that Jesus is responsible for all the words of the Bible. Because there are contradictions. Also, even just, I think I actually started deconstruction when I was in Christian college and I took a Bible class because they taught me how the Bible was created.
Yeah.
And I remember being shocked at how much debate went into it, at how some books almost made it in, but then didn't at the last minute. And then how some books made it in at the last minute. And how Martin Luther, who without Martin Luther, none of our like evangelicalism would not exist, because he started the Protestant Reformation.
Right.
He hated the book of James. He wanted to take the book of James
and
out
Revelation.
of the Bible.
In Revelation.
Yeah, like can you imagine though, like a pastor getting up and being like, yeah, we're just not gonna read this book because I don't like it. Like, you wouldn't be allowed to even, like, in these worlds, say anything like that anymore. So, like, the idea that the Bible is completely inerrant, Jesus is responsible for everything that is in the Bible, is like a very new,
ridiculous,
like, belief system about the Bible.
And it makes you have to suspend reality. It makes you suspend what is right in front of you. Like, no, Paul wrote the letters that Paul wrote. And in fact, to be clear, Jesus even wrote the four gospels, right? Other people did. So it's like,
way later.
Yes. And again, that doesn't mean it has to ruin your faith. In fact, I have found the Bible to be more beautiful and complicated than ever before after I lost the notion of biblical inerrancy. But here's the thing, the point that I really want to drive home, and then we can wrap up if you want, is that I don't think that Ryan and Josh and Russell and Josh should not have the right to believe whatever they want about the Bible. If you want to believe it's all God's word to you and that this is how you interpret it and this is how you live by it, I'm happy for you guys. I'm happy for you that you believe those things. That's fine. The danger, the reason why we're even bringing this stuff up is because these men believe that their view about the Bible is infallible. That their interpretation about the Bible and how they view it and who God is infallible and must be superseded on everyone else in this country. That's the problem. The problem is that they don't think that there's room for how these things get done. They don't respect other people's religious traditions. They want to overrule them. They want a government that looks like them based on their dogmatic positions about the Bible and how they interpret it. I mean, it's wild. There's one passage in the Hebrew Bible that mentions quote unquote homosexuality. Really, it's about a man lying with a man. And right after that, it talks about how you can't plant two different seeds in the same field. Ryan would be like, well, that first part is definitely, applies today. But the seeds, well, that's a prescriptive, that's a descriptive part of the text. Says who? Says who? They make up interpretive rules, and then they hold them as gospel to everyone else. That's our problem.
And also they will say that they take the Bible literally, and that is completely inerrant, but they don't take it literally because it's impossible to do that because there's so many conflicting things in the Bible. There are different worldviews within the Bible, and I always say everybody cherry picks. Everybody 100%. Cherry picks the Bible because you have to. Some of us just admit it. Like, some of us are just honest about it.
The fatal flaw in this world is that here's how the logic goes. They'll be like, well, by what standard, Tim or April, do you hold these views? And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to have some singular, like, foundational point where you get your moral standards. Then when you challenge them, they'll appeal to the Bible, making it seem like somehow they just read the Bible plainly. What they don't recognize is that they are competing with other interpretations of the same book. The Bible is not an objective source for all moral truth. If it was, we wouldn't have 40,000 denominations. We wouldn't have the Eastern Orthodox tradition with their own set of books in their Bible and the Catholic tradition with their own set of books in their Bible, all debating things like salvation and heaven and hell and if Mary was sinless or not, or what does sin even mean, or how do we live. You would not have all of this argumentation throughout thousands of years of church history, including bloody conflicts, if the quote-unquote Bible, the English Protestant Bible, was the sole source for moral objectivity via God. But they don't. Right. They will tell you that I'm crazy and that they are somehow the ones standing on truth. Make it make sense.
If God had the intention of making the Bible his inerrant guidebook for all of us to follow, I think he would have been clearer.
Much clearer.
I think he would have been clearer.
Yeah,
just a teeny bit. Just a teeny bit.
Right. Yeah. Like, just put little footnotes like, hey, people in 2025, this part applies to you.
Right.
You know, like
Exactly.
Jesus.
A little P.S. Church of
Yeah.
America, you
Right.
are not Babylon, or
Right.
you are Babylon.
Yeah. Or hey, let your trans neighbor get health care. It's fine. You know, it's
Oh my
okay.
God.
Anyway, friends, well, listen, I mean, I don't think we're only an hour through a 2-hour video. There's no reason, I think, to kind of keep going. Hopefully people get the point that this world is just, it's built on such a flimsy argument, but they have real power and they are committed. They are committed to making America in their image. And that's what is the scary part, frankly.
Yeah. Well, and they just use circular reasoning. Well, I can't do that. Why? Because the Bible says.
Yeah.
Why? Well, why? Because I can't do that. Like it's just.
And then when you show them in the Bible the parts about not oppressing the foreigner or welcoming the immigrant, oh well, that doesn't really mean what you think it means. You have to ignore that part. Like when Jesus says welcome the stranger, welcome the foreigner. Well, that's not what he really meant. That doesn't apply to governments.
Right.
That applies to people. Like what? You're all over the place.
And to be fair, we do similar things too. We'll say, well,
Totally.
that's not what the original text meant in context, but I try to use context for all of the things, not just when I want to use context when it's convenient. And also, again, you can use the Bible to oppress, or you can use it to liberate, and I just choose to use the Bible to liberate. And if I get to heaven and God looks at me and says, sorry, you can't come in because you had too much empathy and you loved too many neighbors, then so be it. I don't want to be up in heaven if the vast majority of people are not there.
Could you imagine God's like, hey, you loved your gay neighbor too much. April, you loved your non-binary spouse way too much. You have to go to hell for it. I'm sorry.
That is who God is. I don't want to worship that God.
Exactly. Send me to hell. I bet they have free healthcare then. All right, friends. Well, listen, thanks so much for being here. It means the world. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Let us know in the comments if you like this kind of content, if you enjoy the response stuff. If you're listening on the podcast, you can email us, the Tim and April Show at thenewevangelicals.com. We always like hearing from you. Yeah, that's all I got for now. How about you?
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
happy
I'm Tim Whitaker.
holidays. Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays.
Happy Hanukkah. All the things. whatever they all are.
I'm Tim Whitaker.
I'm April Ajoy.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.